Welcome to ChickenMatterTalks, a channel dedicated to exploring the history, heritage, and responsible care of chickens and gamefowl around the world. In today's educational documentary, we will explore the origin and history of the radio gamefowl bloodline, a lesser-known but historically discussed line within the traditional gamefowl breeding communities. This video is created strictly for educational and historical purposes only. Our discussion focuses on heritage, breeding background, genetics, and responsible poultry management. No harmful, unethical, or prohibited activities are shown or encouraged. By the end of this video, you will have a clearer understanding of where the radio bloodline came from, how it was described by breeders, and why transparency is important when discussing historic poultry bloodlines. What is the radio gamefowl bloodline? The radio gamefowl bloodline is generally described as a breeder-named or regionally referenced line, rather than a widely standardized or formally documented bloodline. Unlike well-recorded families, the radio bloodline appears mostly in oral histories, breeder discussions, local breeding records. Because of this, information about radio gamefowl can vary depending on region, breeder source, and time period. Being transparent about this lack of universal documentation is essential for responsible education. Historical context of named gamefowl bloodlines. To understand the radio bloodline, we must first understand how many traditional gamefowl bloodlines were named. Historically, bloodlines were often named after the breeder who developed them, a farm or location, a nickname or identifier used locally. In many cases, these names were not formally registered, which explains why some bloodlines, like radio, have limited written documentation. This practice was common during the early and mid-20th century. Possible origins of the radio bloodline. Based on breeder accounts, the radio gamefowl bloodline is believed to have originated from crosses of established foundation families, possibly involving hatch-type birds, roundhead-type birds, other regional stock available at the time. Rather than being a pure or isolated family, radio gamefowl were likely developed through selective blending, with breeders focusing on structural balance, consistent temperament, adaptability to local conditions. Because of this, radio birds may show variation in appearance across different breeding yards. Is radio a pure or closed bloodline? For transparency, radio is not widely recognized as a closed or standardized bloodline. It is better understood as a breeder-identified strain or local family. This means two radio birds from different breeders may not be genetically identical. Traits may differ depending on breeding history. The name reflects lineage reference, not uniform genetics. Understanding this helps prevent misinformation and unrealistic expectations. Physical characteristics commonly attributed to radio gamefowl. Although variation exists, breeders have historically described radio gamefowl as having body structure, medium to strong frame, balanced proportions, upright stance, plumage. Color may vary depending on foundation stock, often reported in darker or earth-toned shades. General traits: alert behavior, adaptability to different environments. Because radio is not a color-defined bloodline, physical traits can differ significantly from one breeding program to another. Breeding philosophy behind radiotype gamefowl. Breeders who worked with radiotype birds often emphasized practical selection rather than strict pedigree, consistency over appearance, long-term maintenance rather than short-term results. This reflects a broader philosophy seen in many traditional poultry breeding systems, where performance, balance, and survivability were prioritized. Role of radio gamefowl in modern heritage discussions. Today, the radio bloodline is mainly referenced in historical discussions, breeder forums, educational content. Its value lies not in mass popularity, but in its role as an example of how localized bloodlines were developed and maintained. Studying such lines helps modern breeders understand how bloodlines evolve, why documentation matters, the importance of transparency in poultry history, responsible and ethical poultry education. At ChickenMatterTalks, we emphasize responsible learning. When discussing lesser documented bloodlines, ethical education means acknowledging uncertainties, avoiding exaggerated claims, encouraging proper care and welfare. Preserving poultry heritage must always be rooted in accuracy, honesty, and animal well-being. Conclusion. The radio gamefowl bloodline represents a category of poultry history shaped by local breeding practices, oral tradition, practical selection methods. While not widely standardized, it remains an important example of how many traditional bloodlines came to exist. By studying lines like radio, we gain deeper appreciation for the complexity and diversity of poultry heritage. Thank you for watching Chicken Matter Talks. If you found this documentary helpful, please like, subscribe, and share it with fellow poultry enthusiasts. Together, we promote education, transparency, and responsible poultry heritage preservation.